If you were like me growing up, you didn't have an ice machine in your house. I mean, that was a massive luxury that you would have in your fridge. These days, most fridges have the ability to install an ice machine in there at the very least. But most people just use an ice cube tray and make ice the old-fashioned way. But I didn't know there was a device out there which replicated that noisy machine you probably had at the end of the hallway whenever you were on vacation at some hotel. This here is a countertop ice machine. It is a full-on ice machine. This particular unit here is manufactured and branded by MasterChef. However, if you go online, you're going to notice that there is a very broad price range and a very broad styling, or not so broad styling, that makes up these units. And that's because the reality is they're all made in China, they're all based off the same design. You can get this in red, black, white, silver. Do you want a window on the top? Do you not want a window on the top? What kind of door do you want on this thing here? And what kind of controls do you have on them? At the end of the day, they all serve the exact same purpose, and they're all built just about as good. There are larger volume units available out there. That's not what we're doing out here. When I first saw this, I thought it was actually some sort of like sleazy wine chiller or something like that. No, I was absolutely wrong. I was also absolutely wrong when I said to myself that this is probably Peltier cooled. We'll get to that in a moment. But the idea here is that inside, you can open the lid, you have this fancy little ice tray that's sitting right here. And if I take that out there, you have a water reservoir which sits at the very bottom. The cool thing is that once you add water to this, it'll continue to use that water until it effectively runs out because you've used all the ice. The idea of having the ice tray on top of the reservoir is not just a space-saving design. This is also the economical idea that as the ice melts, it drops back down into the reservoir and the machine can make more ice. Now at the very back of this unit here, you can just kind of make it out here. There's a bunch of metal rods. That is how the ice itself is manufactured. It's kind of like an evaporator coil, but it's doing some really weird things inside of here. There's a little tray assembly. You turn it on, it goes into position. Water gets pumped into the tray there. The refrigeration system turns on. It makes what's called bullet ice because of its shape like bullets. And then when it's done, it just dumps the water. It releases the ice and it falls into the tray, and the cycle begins again until it detects that either the ice tray is full using this little sensor that's hiding over here on this particular unit, or it runs out of water. Now, like I said, this was a refrigerated unit, so it does actually contain a compressor and entire gas loop. To get into that now, I'm going to grab a screwdriver and we're going to pop this thing open. So to open this particular unit here, I believe it's just 1, 2, 6 screws on the bottom. Six screws are out. Put it back up when it stopped like this, and I'm just gonna grab the plastic. And, oh, maybe I should have, there we go. And off that goes. It is plastic, it's fragile. What do you expect? And inside, look at this. Oh my God, it's got the smallest little compressor I've ever seen before. Now, it is actually, what is this? This is a propane-filled device. It contains refrigerant R134A 2.3 ounces. Neat. So, the way the refrigeration system in this works here, if you don't know the basic idea of how a refrigerator works, the compressor converts a gas into a liquid form. This coal is like this liquid here is moved up to the evaporator coil. In the evaporator coil, the conversion of the cold liquid is transferred out into the air, or in this case, into the ice, so the ice can be made, but heat is also then brought back in as the evaporator boils off this refrigerant liquid. Now this hot gas returns back to the compressor, but on its way, we have a condenser coil, which is hiding right here, and this here is then removing the heat out of the refrigerant, and then it goes back in its gaseous form into the compressor and back through the system again. To release the ice in this is doing a rather ingenious process. It doesn't need an electronic heater at all. Remember, we have hot gas which is leaving the evaporator coil, and we also have cold liquid on one side, this solenoid right here quite simply bypasses the evaporator or the condenser coil entirely and allows this hot gas to go back into the high pressure side of the of the evaporator coil. I'm getting the condenser and evaporator coils mixed up. Work with me here. And that's how it defrosts the ice. Now, that's all there is to it besides just this little tiny water pump which is hiding down here. I don't even see a metering device, but hidden away underneath this black piece right here is a microcontroller. This is the only logic in here. I see a relay, oh, maybe some opto-isolators, and what is that for a microcontroller? I can't even see it, but you get the idea. It's not a complicated device. And yet, this unit here does not work. Or at least, it tries to work. The first time I ran it, it worked, sure, it cycled once, and then it did something kind of weird with the plastic tray. I also noticed that it was having issues where it would not defrost properly and ice would get stuck. It was almost like the entire harvesting operation was out of order, so something wasn't right there. And then I finally began to clue into what our problem was, and it's the micro switches on the side here which indicate where our water tray is. Sure, one of them does still click away like it should. However, this one over here is both bent and not clicking at all. And I could very clearly see when I had the unit running with the lid off, there was a problem with this section over here. The reality is that I could make it behave even just once by tapping it with a screwdriver. So this is the big thing I have to repair on this before I can actually use it for making ice again. And these micro switches are not anything special. So we're like saying 250 volts AC and like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 amps contact rating. But this is all low voltage wiring here. You're not seeing more than 12 volts on it. So you have a huge selection of micro switches out there. So of course, I couldn't help but salvage through a bunch of these little tiny micro switches here with green taps, because they are manufactured by Cherry. Yes, the same manufacturer who does keyboard switches. Anyways, let's try and get this done by desoldering and replacing everything. For that, we're gonna have to go into the workshop. All right, so we are currently set up with the world's smallest workbench and the world's second most squeakiest chair. We have our iron all heated up here, and now we're gonna take these switches out. Now, instead of me just desoldering them immediately, I'm going to take these screws out, then I'm going to switch them out so I don't get myself completely confused here. This one here, pretty straightforward stuff, if you can see that. That is one. And totally dead. Not a click on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to heat these up. And that is the normally open contacts. Come on. One switch, gone. All right, so let's get this underway. The screws are actually not the same, or the holes for this are not the same size. Okay, well, let's see what happens. Oh, got that first try. Lining up my holes here. Making sure my switch is still good. Alright, so that's in. And that can go there. And that can go there. And all I have to do now Just apply a bit of fresh solder to get that wired in or soldered in. Come on. 1, 2. And they're good and tight. This one's somewhat long. I'm going to trim that just a little bit. There we go. Now comes this one up here. And this is going to be fun because it is this white plastic trim here. So this is in the way of these 2 screws. You actually have to take the whole top of the unit off to get it off, which sucks. To be honest, as long as we don't damage the outer piece of white plastic, and it's okay about the inner piece, if we cut about yay much off, no one will ever notice. Yes, it's a cheap way of doing it, but hey, it's a cheap ice machine. Can you really complain about stuff you can't see? Especially if it doesn't negatively affect the machine mechanically at all. There we go. Just enough to get both screws, and I'm going to actually switch over to a smaller screwdriver just so I can reach that. And it's 1 screw. Carefully bring that out. And now the other screw. And that just comes out as well. And I can just pull that down and ta-da! Okay, now we got 2 blue wires that go to the common and the brown wire which goes to normally open. So, can I desolder? This one's going to be a fun one because I got to solder it loose like this. Really should increase my iron temperature a bit there. Clean my tip. Come on, there we go. Okay, so, yeah. That was normally open, and the blues are my commons. There we go. And that there is, ow! Very hot switch number 2. Gone. So, that just, doesn't fit. There's a blob of solder which is preventing me from, and that just fell on the ground. Got it now. But I will have to strip this one just a little bit. There we go. So that was common. So just kind of feed both of those through there. Will they fit? I don't think they'll fit on, oh no, just barely. And just kind of bend them a bit. And we can take the iron here and solder that in. Good. All right, one more. And that was on the, crap, I dropped it. I don't have good memory here. Yeah, that was on normally open. Which is that one right there. You can just fold that. All right. And that really should be all we need to do for soldering. Now it's just putting it back together. And it goes up into there. Alright, well, okay. I guess if that's alright for it. Of course, these screws still don't fit. Yeah, they don't. Yay! So I just got to get them ready. 1. And 2. And that just kind of gets jiggered up there. And then I could just tighten those screws down. Alright, so now, in theory, we have replaced both switches. And the unit should now work perfectly fine. So, nothing left to do, really, but go test it. Oh, and one other problem here, just before we go. I had a leak. You see this thing down here? This is the drain for the entire system, so you don't have to dump it out when you're done here. And I was finding that it wasn't leaking from anywhere on the plumbing here. It wasn't here on the flange. There was supposed to be a little tiny gasket inside the end of this cap here, and that had gone missing. So it was always getting a very, very, very tiny drip. The easiest way to fix that, however, was to put a piece of double-sided foam tape in there and then just, well, thread it back in. But anyways, where were we? Oh, yeah, right. And that is the sound of success. 2 switches. That's all it took to fix this thing. And it makes ice. What a surprise. I left this thing after it did its first cycle for about 4 hours. When I got back, it gave me an entirely full basket of ice, and it produced approximately a little over 3 pounds of ice in total. That's not too bad for maybe like 2 or 3 people maybe having drinks a decent amount over a couple of hours. But as for large parties, I would definitely recommend you get something bigger or, just buy bags of ice like anybody else. It is a bit expensive, but if you can find them used, sure, they're a cool, nice, portable ice machine. It'll recycle the water in the ice as it melts, and it does not that bad of a job, and compared to that old ice machine at the end of the hotel corridor, this is not all that loud either. And it gets even quieter because it automatically shuts itself off when it's done. Do I recommend you get one? Sure. If you can find one, sure. In this particular Master Chef model, yeah, sure, whatever. Remember what I said before. They're all basically the exact same systems, just different colors, different body configurations, but the inside, it's still the exact same way it manufactures bullet ice. Well, that was a fun little repair there, and I hope you really enjoyed me looking at this machine. And until next time, have a good one.